When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
Alright, hello YouTube, and welcome back to the Grease Goblin YouTube channel. In today's video, we are going to be talking about Littlefinger, and what is he up to, what's his big plan, and is the plan that he tells Sansa actually what he's going to be doing? I have varying opinions on that, and I think George makes it very present in the text that he never actually gives us what's going to happen, right? Any plans that are basically spoken to, or are talked to, or we know about, usually don't happen, or something goes wrong. So in this video, we're going to talk about how I think that actually the Littlefinger plan that he sells to Sansa doesn't actually make any sense. But before we get into the video, if you guys like to subscribe, like, and comment, please do. It helps the channel grow, raise your appeal, and might like this content as well. Now, the big point we need to talk about with Littlefinger and also Sansa is going to be that Littlefinger believed that he is going to, or I guess Sansa believes that Littlefinger is going to basically marry her to Harry the Heir. And that's what's going to probably happen in Littlefinger's plan. Now, here's the problem. With this being said, Sansa is going to reveal that she's Sansa, that she's not Elaine, and she's not actually related to Littlefinger when this happens. But Littlefinger only seeks to lose power in this situation, right? Because Harry the Heir could possibly come into his own and he would be the rightful ruler, he'd be capable with Sansa at his side, Littlefinger would become less and less valuable. And he would lose power in this situation. Right now, he is the basically sole leader of the Vale through Robert Arryn. And Robert Arryn, or Robin Arryn, is right now very sickly, and Littlefinger has suggested that we could speed along his death, or that he's a sickly child, he could die already. But in this regard, I think it's just as likely that Littlefinger does that to Harry the Heir. Because again, Littlefinger has all of his power right now in the Vale tied to Robin Arryn. Now, yes, he's working his magic, he's swaying people to his side, but at the same time, if Robin Arryn was to die right now, Littlefinger would have not much power, right? It would all go to someone else, like a Harry the Heir, maybe the Royces. They would kind of take over. So, in my opinion, it makes way more sense if Robin Arryn lives on and Littlefinger continues to rule through Robin Arryn, because personally, it just doesn't make any sense there. So then, what could Littlefinger do with Sansa? Because Sansa is a very valuable chip. You're not going to marry her into something that you can already kind of control with Robin Arryn. That's why I just don't think for Littlefinger, and this isn't show Littlefinger. He's not stupid. I think in the books, he's going to be doing something else. Sansa could be used as a bargaining chip for himself, because again, we know he has some feelings for Sansa. There's been some weird scenarios between the two, especially on Littlefinger's side of it. But that's another thing we have to talk about with Harry the Heir and Sansa's quote-unquote marriage, is that Littlefinger also wants Sansa to himself. So even if Sansa and Harry the Heir were to get married, I think it's just as likely that Littlefinger could have Harry the Heir killed, and maybe that's the way Sansa finds out what Littlefinger's been up to and all that. I mean, and she already kind of has figured out things like Joffrey's death, his, part in it. But, maybe some other things could be uncovered that way as well. But I think it's way more likely that Littlefinger could, look to possibly move Sansa with Aegon's camp. It could be possible. I don't think that one's as likely. I think young Griff is definitely going to be going along with the Dornish and Arianne. I think where they are already, I think Sansa having to get there with all that, I just don't think it's going to happen. And I also think Varys' influence there would not want Littlefinger there. So that to me is interesting. Now Littlefinger would have the backing of the Vale, which would be very intriguing and great for young Griff in this situation. But I don't see that one happening. I could see, so this to me is a interesting option, because right now Littlefinger has control of Harrenhal, or quote unquote is supposed to have control of Harrenhal. Jaime is the one that ends up kind of, figuring all that out and getting control back of that. But Littlefinger right now is supposed to kind of be the quote unquote ruler of the Riverlands, right? He's paramount of the Trident and all that stuff. So he is technically supposed to be the one ruling. Now, if he was to bring Sansa over, they eliminate the Frey power right now, alongside of Lady Catelyn being Stoneheart, and everything else going on there. Possibly that could be a way that Sansa is able to reclaim the Riverlands, and Littlefinger could get some influence there. But I'm not sure how far Littlefinger is going to go, because we know that Littlefinger is going to have to die some way or another, and Sansa is going to be the one that kind of unravels it all. So the question is going to be, how is that going to happen? How is Sansa going to be able to put this together? Now, I think it could be some situation where Harry the Heir dies and Littlefinger kind of, is all behind that, and that Sansa actually ends up figuring this out. Sansa starts to kind of figure out that Littlefinger is very much just lying to her, using her as a pawn, and manipulating her, which to a degree Sansa already knows that he's kind of using her as a tool. But I think this would be the way that Sansa, it's a very master and apprentice thing, where the apprentice becomes the master, kind of like a Sith in Star Wars, where I think Sansa eventually is going to have to take that mantle from Littlefinger. Hopefully it's in a way that makes sense, because Harry the Heir dying by Littlefinger very much makes sense. It's a power move that would make sense, and it would eliminate like another heir that could possibly come into the power in the Vale. And Littlefinger kind of thrives on that chaos. So it'd be interesting if that is the thing that actually tips the scale. Now, of course, I think there has to be more to it. I think Sansa has to eventually figure out that Littlefinger was the one that betrayed Ned and all that stuff. Eventually, that has to be figured out. But how is that going to happen, right? Could this be that Varys, he has someone infiltrating right now in the Littlefinger camp right now that could possibly give her this information if Varys was to tell her that, or tell him that, and then she, yeah, maybe something like that could end up happening. I'm not sure, because again, most of the people at the Vale have been very secluded from the war. Something we know of from it damns Robb's campaign. If the Vale had been with Robb, things would have gone vastly different. And they pretty much have been forced to keep to themselves because of Littlefinger and Lysa. So none of them are really going to know what's going to happen in King's Landing, besides some of these people that Littlefinger brought, that could possibly have known what was going on in King's Landing. So the question is going to be, Sansa probably is going to have to leave the Vale at some point. And I think what makes sense logically for the story is most of our characters end up meeting in the Riverlands. So basically how they did it in the show they decided to make everyone meet up in Winterfell and in the north. For the show, it just kind of made sense because we'd spent the most amount of time at Winterfell. We hadn't spent a lot of time at all of these other castles, like River Run and all that stuff. So I think, or Moat Cailin, but I think for the book series, if you look at where a lot of our characters are, how many POVs we have, how much storytelling has to happen, I think it makes logical sense that most of our characters will end up actually meeting in the Riverlands. And then I think the others will come to them, not the other way around. In the show, we had it where I feel like all of the living kind of went north and met the others, and then the others kind of got through the wall, but, all of our forces were already there. I think it's going to be the opposite. So George has very much put this point on how we're not focusing on the main issue of climate change. It's kind of, he likes to do that parallel and other things. So we're all not, together on that issue. And since we're not together on that, we've been warring with other, powers in Westeros. That's been neglected. So I think what George is going to do is say, okay, we weren't ready, and the others are going to basically take the north. I think Stannis could be the one where he takes Winterfell, like I've talked about in a video last week, where I think he will take Winterfell, and he ends up trying to hold off the others, trying to give the living enough time to retreat down through the neck, and maybe just holding Moat Cailin or something like that, which is you can't really do it from the south side. It's going to be, or the southern side is where the defending force is going to be against the northern half. So that's going to be a tough one, but I think it makes logical sense to bring all of our characters to the Riverlands. I think Arya is going to end up in there. So I think Sansa and Littlefinger definitely makes sense that they bring the Vale forces to try and reclaim a lot of the Riverlands for maybe Sansa's name. They play on that factor. Kind of similar to the way Littlefinger did it in the show with Robb and Aaron, saying like Sansa needs to be rescued from the north and all that stuff. I think similarly that way Littlefinger could just deceive them in that way. And then also we already know a lot of the houses in the Vale are kind of wanting to get in the war because they've been so passive and they really don't like the Lannisters and all that. They're believed that the Lannisters killed Jon Arryn, who a lot of them loved. So again, I think they would have no problems going against the Lannisters or the Freys, both of which are still in the Riverlands. So that makes a lot of sense for me. So I think the idea here is going to be Sansa and Littlefinger leave the Vale, possibly Sansa figuring out that Harry the Heir was poisoned by Littlefinger, if that plot goes that way. Or let's say they marry and Harry the Heir accompanies, and Harry the Heir is the one that's kind of like, okay, we'll take the Riverlands back for you. I think Littlefinger eventually kills him, maybe on their way or something like that. And then what we'll see is, I think, because of all these characters reuniting in the Riverlands, we will eventually kind of find out more about what Littlefinger was doing and how he betrayed Ned. I think that will happen one way or another. So that is going to be kind of how that plays out. That also could be maybe Bran is the one to kind of reveal it the way it happened in the show, but just differently, not as done as stupidly. That could be how that happens, but I think the end result for Littlefinger is he is going to die. Now, I don't think it might not be in Winds. I think Winds of Winter, we could see Littlefinger die towards the very end, or I think we could see him die in the first half of A Dream of Spring. That is my predictions for Littlefinger. I think he is kind of the opposite of Varys, where I think the early books, Littlefinger was kind of doing this, where he was, he was going up, gaining power, and putting himself in a good position. And I think the first half of Winds, he'll maybe continue that, and then he'll start to kind of climb down. Whereas Varys, it's kind of felt like a lot of his plans have not really gone anywhere, and they haven't really worked out. But now everything with Fagon, young Griff, I think we're going to see him kind of shoot up again in power. And I really am a hard believer that Varys is going to be the one who's really going to own the next book, with everything happening with young Griff. So thank you guys all for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.
If you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention.